Montgomery County 911, what's the address of the emergency?
So you all are heading down there. Did you go to the original point that you were supposed to drop off, or did you go somewhere else?
We did not go to our original point. We actually, so we deploy as a team. We go as a convoy so that the moment we hit the ground, there's 40 or 50 of us there and we can step right into whatever we need to do. We deployed to, if you're facing the back of the Capitol, we went to the north side. And we deployed into a crowd of, I would probably say, about 50,000 people,
Yeah.
I'm guessing. It was, you couldn't really see it coming down Constitution Avenue, but the minute you hit the hill to go up to Capitol Hill, it was very evident that something was going on.
Okay. So you jump out.
So we jump out.
Helmets.
What do you see? Like when you rolled in, were there people there? Was it just empty? Was it
We were surrounded immediately.
surrounded by?
The crowd.
Okay.
I think they realized that a convoy had just come in. They probably had no idea who we were because we're not wearing Capitol Police uniforms. We're wearing our own uniforms. And we were surrounded by several thousand people, I would say. And it was a mixed bag. You had, this person here would be saying, thank you for coming. This place is out of control. And then you'd have a group over here calling us traitors because we're here to defend a process that was illegitimate. It was a mixed bag, but hearing the traitor part really puts you on edge very quickly because you have no idea who's armed, who's not, whether you turn and they're going to whip a brick at you or something, you just don't know. So it ramped up very quickly.
So several thousand surrounding you.
Yes.
There's 40 of you.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So we try to make an impression very quickly.
Yeah.
And we did.
We did, yeah, because our
Noise.
noise,
Presence.
presence
Yeah, you make
with
your
shields.
presence
Some of us carry very long shields that are about 6 feet long. Some of us carry what we refer to as a Spartan shield, which is the round one, so you can move with it very quickly.
Right.
And I think when you see people coming out like that, if you're intending on giving them harm, you might think twice about it because our level one platoon, at least, are very large individuals. So
Right.
it definitely sends a message right off the bat.
Probably why I'm not allowed to be on the level one. There's a height requirement.
Right.
So you get everything together, and then you deploy. Where'd you go?
So we gathered up our vans, I'm sorry, the people from our vans, and we
Took the long way.
took the long way. We really could have gone in one direction very quickly, but there were tens of thousands of people there at that point, and you couldn't go through that crowd. So we actually went through the front of the Capitol, which is in between the Capitol and the Supreme Court. We actually went on a jog through there, coming
With
across
all of your stuff.
everything.
You guys are
and
jogging.
I would say
Everything.
it's with the shields, probably about 70 or 80 pounds,
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Shields, full gear, helmets, and our gas masks.
Gas masks.
Gas mask as well.
Gas mask on or just
Gas
donned
mask
or?
on.
That was the worst part.
No, not
You donned them.
not secured. We
Yeah, yeah.
physically put them on.
Right.
Because again, we like Sergeant Haley said, we get there, we park, we jump out. There's a mixed bag of people there, and what gave me pause was people screaming, "Don't forget your oath. Don't forget who you are." I get goosebumps now thinking about that day. And we proceed to jog, full gear. I'm one of the 6 members on level 1 that carries a 6-foot shield. So we're running through the crowd. We circle to the back end, and that's when when you're in the back of the Capitol, you can see all the way down the lawn.
So you're on the, so we can set this up, because the images are there. I know where you all were, but you're on the backside where all that scaffolding was,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Eventually, that's where we deployed to.
That's where you deployed
Not
to.
initially.
Not initially.
Initially, we went through the front of the Capitol.
Right.
And I remember as we were running by, the main grand steps that go up to the doors that are like
Yes.
20 feet high. And that was being overrun. It was like you could see people pounding on the doors and breaking the windows. And we were going by because I think what was going on the backside was worse.
Yeah.
So we did a loop around the Capitol and came up on the scaffolding.
Now,
behind the scaffolding.
when you guys, there were other agencies there, right?
No.
No.
We were the first. So Capitol Police were on scene.
Right.
DC Police were on scene.
DC Police, Capitol.
Montgomery County was the first allied agency, not Capitol Police, not DC Police, that arrived on scene.
Now, how were they equipped? Did they have shields? Did they have, or was
They
it?
had very minimal.
Minimal.
They had helmets, with the masks that
Oh,
drop
thankfully,
down.
yeah.
Yeah. And I don't recall seeing, at least where we went to, I don't recall seeing shields.
Right.
And so it's real easy to break through lines and other things
Oh,
when
yeah.
you don't have the shields. Our shields interlock. And
Okay.
so when we get down there, we slam them down because the noise makes an impression, and then we link them together and turn them and they lock. And so you can't get through them.
Okay.
You would have to go over top of them
Yes. Or overrun us.
Yeah.
And
Did they try to?
all
they
day long.
tried. They tried.
They tried.
They tried.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that says, like, you get there, you establish, your law enforcement, you establish yourself, giving commands, get back,
The whole time.
Leave.
Yeah.
right? And yet, they're going to try and break through for, I mean, I don't know, did they say what?
So off to our side, I could see that people had busted out some windows on the back of the Capitol and they were climbing in. But we were kind of in the center at that point, and we were reclaiming territory. Like, you can't just go and address that when you have 50,000 people storming in a building. You have to claim territory as you go. And eventually we did, but it's not something that just, you show up
right
and
away.
people yield to you, because that's not what happened.
Well, in this case, they didn't. I mean, there's been places where we've deployed where people just were calm.
Yes, of course.
I mean, we've seen protests like that where no one's being assaulted, but we were being assaulted.
Yes.
The police, not only the
Yes.
Capitol, but the police themselves.
The whole day.
I mean, I know we have an officer that still hasn't returned to duty
Yeah.
because they were hit with a chair.
Yeah.
Yes. In
and-
the head.
In the head, yeah, hit with a chair in the head. And we have other injuries. I mean, I remember hearing about what you all went through. So you're seeing this vision is in front of you. You're in the one of the most historic buildings
In the world.
in the world, right? I was about to say in the country, in the world. And you're looking out. What are you seeing? You're tens of thousands of people.
Yeah, it was very hard to focus on what was going on down on the lawn because the people directly in front of us were so combative, and I don't know if assaultive is a word, but they were clearly trying to get through us to go do what, at the time we didn't know. I feel like I definitely had a sense that it was historic in that event. I'd never been on the backside of the Capitol like that, but to the extent that it was, it's out of your mind at that time, and you're dealing with who's in front of you.
Yeah.
Did you think your life was in danger?
I was concerned about pipe bombs due to the crowd. I was concerned about firearms. I was very thankful that I didn't see either one of those. There was a lot of pepper spray, a lot of bear spray, a lot of that sort of
Brought
thing.
by them,
Yes, being shot into
Yeah.
us.
shot into you.
Yes.
And certainly later in the day, you refer to what happened to our lieutenant still being injured. I actually saw him get hit with that chair.
Okay.
And at that point, I think we were talking about maybe 5 or 5:30 in the afternoon. So in January, it's getting dark. We're looking through a gas mask, which makes it even harder to see. And you've got still tens of thousands of people in front of you. And metal chairs were thrown at us too. But I think after our lieutenant got hit, we were more aware that those were coming, because they're not coming from the people in the front, they're coming from like 10 rows back. And so in the dark, you don't see it coming until it's right on you.
Right.
And bike racks, chairs, pretty much anything you could throw
they could pick
was
up.
being thrown.
Yes.
What time did you guys approximately get there? In the morning or in the day?
I think we got to our special operations division around 12, and I
Okay.
think we were at the Capitol deployed by like 1:45,
Okay.
I believe.
It only took us about 40 minutes to get there, lights and sirens. At one point, we hit DC. We were going down the opposite way down one-way streets, and there were mass amounts of people walking away. So when Sergeant Haley says 50,000 people, the number is small relative to who actually was there. There were a number of people walking away as we were driving in. So once we hit it, we hit it and we get out, gear up, jog around, stage, and I'm standing there with my buddies, shields interlocked. And like Sergeant Haley said, I'm not looking down the lawn. I'm looking at what's in front of me. And out of nowhere, I don't know why, but these four gentlemen, individuals, caught my eye. And my buddy says, they're about to rush us. And I looked at my buddy and I was like, no, they're not. They're not going to rush us. Like, we show up and there was I don't remember who it was, but there were cops saying, thank God Moco's here.
Yeah.
And sure enough, after a couple of minutes of my buddy saying they're going to rush us, I see them unpack what looked like 8 to 12 feet of linoleum or something. And they're passing out other objects, other items, and they rush us. And from that point, for the next 4 to 5 hours, it was go time. We were literally fighting for our lives, taking ground when we could. But it's not just a blind rush to reclaim territory.
Right.
We had what we call Overwatch, which is our protective security detail, which are SWAT officers or SWAT operators, who were at an elevated position above us on Capitol grounds. So it was working in tandem with them through our command staff, trying to listen to everything on the radio when you can't really hear anything.
So you're listening to a radio. There's so much going on around you guys at that time.
Our training really came to bear that day because we're processing information in seconds, having to make decisions while also remembering our policies and procedures.
Yeah.
You have to factor all of that as you're moving.
But I do want to draw something, because I don't think people because look, our society now, right? We're trying to keep this podcast to 20 minutes, right? We don't want to.
Sure.
We don't want to overstimulate because we just don't have the attention. But you said something there that I want people to understand and try and feel about what these officers, our partners down there, what you guys did. You said 4 to 5 hours. So you're already set up. You're setting up shields. You're trying to hold a line. For 4 or 5 hours, you were the subject of an assault to try and get into the Capitol
Yes.
and to hold your ground.
Yes.
I don't think people understand, because again, we'll show like a little 2-minute clip of, everything going on. You guys held that ground for 4 or 5 hours. I mean, you go and think of the, I'm a movie guy and a TV, like Game of Thrones, where they get all the shields together. It lasts for like 45 minutes. 4 or 5 hours.
Yes. No breaks.
Yeah.
Right.
You're not taking a water break. You're not taking a bathroom break.
That's why I asked what time you guys had gotten down there, because you had clearly been, like you said, 4 or 5 hours, shields interlocked, running to get there. And you mentioned something earlier when you were talking about Baltimore. You said you guys were there to restore order. That's what you guys were there to do.
Yeah, and I thought it was horrible to have to wear a gas mask for 4 hours. Like, you have no idea how bad that is.
I did it one time. It was
Yeah.
terrible.
It's awful. And, the thing is you ask about whether you're nervous or in fear, one of the most fearful things, I think, is that we have to play by the rules. You know what I mean? The rules of the Constitution and law and order, they do not.
Right.
And so you really have a lot of unknowns. Like, I know I can look down the line of several hundred police officers, and I know pretty much how every one of them is going to react and handle something. But across the line, anything goes, and that's...
Yeah.
So you bring up an interesting, first of all, the whole scene that is painted, whether from us talking or you go watch videos. So you all were there. We come away from experiences all the time, when I was a detective or, in the midnight off, you'll come away from an experience from time to time and be like, wow, that was weird. Or something just struck you. Was there anything that struck you guys as you were there? Other than the obvious part of being on the line for 4 or 5 hours and trying to restore order at this great building. But anything you saw that you're like, okay, that's just bizarre.
I think for me was it was just very surreal to see how out of control it was when we first got there.
Yeah.
And how, within 4 hours, that order was restored very clearly and that sort of thing. But I remember being up there at one point, there's ebbs and flows, you know what I mean, to every situation, and thinking that this was historic. We're on the back of the Capitol, like no one else has ever done this in the history of this country. Like this is the first time, short of the British coming in the War of 1812, and looking around and knowing that there was maybe not even going to be a record of it because the media couldn't be there because they're just as despised as we were that day. There's no news helicopters overhead like there was in Baltimore because there's restricted fly zones. They can't fly there. And so really it was going to come down to cameras at the Capitol, and the body cameras we were wearing might be the only record of this. And it was pretty crazy.
Wow. Willie?
I'm going to have to echo what Sergeant Haley said. Just the entire event of that day, everything that transpired, from people rushing us, trying to snatch our shields, trying to physically, there were a couple times where a couple of officers physically got grabbed and almost dragged into the crowd, and we're not going to let that happen. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
To the individual who was walking around trying to give free hugs. There was a gentleman, had to have been in his 20s, young kid, who was trying to stand in that space in the middle, wanting to, hey, let's not do it this way. So it was the totality of everything, and Montgomery County Police, we were a part of that. And I think it says a lot that we were the first allied agency on scene, and as quickly as we were.
Can I ask you a question really quick?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
meant to ask you earlier. So you said that people were so excited that we had gotten there. Now, I don't know if so excited, but they were thankful
Yes,
rather
ma'am.
that Montgomery County had arrived. Is it our training? Was it what we had? Why were they so thankful that we were there?
I want to say it's because of who we are. And this is not to speak ill of any of our brother or sister agencies. But our executives, when it's time to train, we get afforded that opportunity. And being that this is not, this level one is not myself and Sergeant Haley's primary responsibility. It's our secondary role. And when we show up to train, we understand the mission. And that's what's important, the mission. We go down, we aid, we support, we help restore order, we operate within our policies, even though we're deputized as U.S. Capitol Police officers. We don't forget who we are, we don't forget our training, we maintain our professionalism at all times. And I think that's what puts us in a position where when certain departments need mutual aid, we are on that short list. And I take pride in that.
Absolutely.
We all take pride in that.
Well, and another thing that you bring up, right, and I have to, the equipment, we're equipped.
Yes.
We had the foresight to go and get the right thing, and I actually joke with Assistant Chief Yamada, who's oversees CERT as part of our Special Operations Division. He's always come and asked me to buy things, but we recognize how important. Like the gear you have is not cheap.
No.
Very expensive.
And it's
very
not even
expensive.
it's not even the full kit, as
Right.
they call it.
Right.
It's not even the full kit. It's a scaled down version of the kit that
But it
Level 1
protects you.
wears.
It keeps you safe. It affords you the opportunity to number one, not go home injured, unless, of course, people are throwing chairs and things that we hadn't seen before. But it keeps you safe from being injured, and you have that equipment, and we share it, and we actually give people other ideas. I mean, Baltimore, so let's go back to Freddie Gray. I mean, Baltimore, we worked with them extensively after Freddie Gray to give them not only the training, but the expertise and the equipment and all that. And and honestly, Tom Manger, Chief Manger was the chief here when we had the vision to put this stuff together. I'm quite sure he's doing the same thing down with the Capitol Police now. I dare
Sure
say
he is.
I dare say we've probably sent our folks to train, to help train them. So I honestly, I think they were just happy to see anyone down there. I mean, when you hear the chilling radio coming from the kid, because we can hear other people's radios.
Yes.
Yes.
And when you hear that call go out, something you've never heard, I mean, you never even fathomed.
Well, and this is the thing too, is, that wasn't the first time we worked with Capitol Police officers. We've done, like the chief said, inaugurations.
Yeah.
We've deployed with them in situations that were semi-riotous, you know what I mean, and restored order very swiftly. And so I think there's a confidence factor there too, that hey, these guys are always down here in mutual aid helping us. Like, these aren't strangers to us, and so there's a familiarity there too.
Yeah, a relationship that you guys can work together.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's, another thing too that changes the dynamic, that when you're talking about gear and why it's so important, is if I'm standing there with a 6-foot shield and you're standing across from me throwing a brick at me, if I'm just standing there dressed like this, that could potentially be a deadly force situation.
Yeah.
But with a 6-foot shield, I don't necessarily feel that way.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it really changes the dynamic and what kind of force we use also.
It's also psychological when you think about it. So part of our gear includes a suit which is fire rated. So you can wear your uniform. You can then put on the protective pieces, the hard composite material protective pieces, and then you can put on what we call a Yaffee suit, which is fire rated.
Okay.
So part of the psychological aspect of this deployment is if you're standing there, like Sergeant Haley said, with a shield, with your gear on, and people are throwing debris at you, and it's kind of just ricocheting off. And even if you don't have your shield in front of you, there's certain parts where your limbs are covered, and if stuff is bouncing off of you, right, it kind of sends a message to the other side. And whereas it does change the engagement of it being a deadly force encounter, it can impact it rather. Not, I won't say change, I'll say impact. It impacts them, the opposition, the civil unrest, and it maybe gets them to think twice. And it helps us when it comes time to reclaim ground.
So I think that's an excellent point. The other excellent point, because we were talking about it here, it's 90-some degrees outside right now. Thankfully, that was in January, because I
Yes.
can't even, I can't even imagine. Maybe everyone would have been worn out. I don't know. But I saw a fantastic video that Chief of Metropolitan Police has that showed the crowd dispersing on the back through those hours. So eventually everyone disperses. Then we go home, right? What time do you get home?
Actually, we had to stay because we didn't get our first break until a little bit after 6 p.m.
Okay.
And so that was when other agencies had gotten there, they'd gotten organized. And, we had pushed people down to the grass part of the back lawn at the Capitol. And at that point, after about 4 hours, other agencies took over for us so we could kind of go back and get some water and do whatever. And I think most of us were sending text messages to family because I not knowing what the news coverage was, I'm sure it was intense. And we just wanted to send a message to say, hey, everything's good. And so I think that was kind of our first step back. But we were redeployed later in the evening around like 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night when they actually certified the electoral college vote.
Right, okay.
Even though the Capitol had been completely secured at that time.
Right.
They just didn't know what to expect that day. And so we were redeployed to the back of the Capitol, late at night. Much different environment at that point to help secure that actual official vote.
Right. Okay. So you brought up a great point. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but 4 or 5 hours into this, your loved ones know you're down there, and then finally you get to send a text. Like, you're not on the line. We see people can't even keep their hands off their phones while they're in the car driving, right? You guys have to wait 4 or 5 hours before you can tell the people that love and care about you the most, hey, I'm okay. And we'll probably get into that in another podcast. Probably gave me another good idea. You can have some loved ones in talking about what it's like to sit around waiting 5 hours while you're watching the news and know that your loved one's involved in something. But so coming back around, you're deployed. The election is certified. What time did you guys get home? Did we ever let you go home?
I think probably after midnight
Yeah.
at some point.
Headed back to Montgomery County?
Yes.
We have to go back to the Special Operations Division. We do all our gear. We account for everybody. You know, we debrief
Yep.
for sure.
Any injuries?
And then
Injuries? Yep.
discuss that we're going to be down there the very next morning.
When did you have to be there the next morning?
I think we got a little bit of a break,
little
maybe
bit.
like 10 or 11 in the morning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because nobody knew, what was going to happen at that point.
Did you get home 2, 3 in the morning?
I think
About,
so.
depending on where you live.
Depending on where you live.
Yeah.
3 in the morning, so you had just enough time to shower, get a couple hours, 4
Sleep.
hours sleep, 3 hours sleep, do the family hug.
Do the family hug.
I was going to say, your families are essentially certified too, from the way that I hear it. They're waiting all this time. You send a text. I
Yeah,
imagine something like, I'm good.
My wife wouldn't even watch it. And
Yeah.
a couple people called her and they're like, hey, is Larry down there? And she's like, I don't want to know. Because after Baltimore, I think that was stressful enough. So
Yeah.
she just kind of didn't watch anything and just waited to hear from me because
Yeah.
it's too stressful.
You know,
Yeah.
when the smoke literally settled and cleared, officers from all over were just spent. And I know for myself, I'm sitting around fellow officers, and I opened up my phone and I went to YouTube and I just started watching Dr. King's sermons. And it kind of just, there was one sermon in particular I watched, and it just kind of brought it all full circle for me. Some of us are updating our social media, just letting everybody know, because you have immediate family, your partners, your spouses at home, you have your extended family, and then especially for those of us who are not Maryland residents, who weren't born in Maryland, we
Right.
have friends and family in other states.
Right.
So it's just kind of like you can update your social media, send out a text message, hey, I'm okay, I'm good, and then you catch up later. But that's when you really start reflecting, and you're looking at just the landscape. And I remember looking up, and I see this huge American flag, and it's just kind of hanging. It's not. She's still holding strong, but she's a little beat up and a little worn. And I think it's symbolic of that day and everything that we went through.
Absolutely. And then, again, the beauty of it, and both of you referenced it, and it's what we look at as officers. We restore order. We're in the middle. We keep that middle. We keep that line between
Order and chaos.
order and chaos. And, thankfully, what you guys did helped to keep the Capitol safe and to let order continue. All the other politics aside, right? Because they'll still argue left and right over that.
Yeah, it's irrelevant to us.
Right. At the end of the day, we swore an oath. We upheld that oath. I will tell you, we're all proud of you. We're thankful that you answered the call to go down there that day, and hopefully you've gotten a little time to relax since then. But I love that we got to speak to you today, and just an extraordinary. I hope one day you get to tell your grandkids about the day
Hopefully.
you were down at January 6th. So
One of the reasons I wanted to do this. So they
Good.
can watch it themselves.
good.
I want to bring up something. When I was in the academy in 2013, you served as captain for a period. And I remember one day we were in class and you walked in and you said something which has stuck with me ever since. In short, you told us to be the standard in everything we do in life. And that has stuck with me. And I feel like as a member of CERT, as a level 1 officer, the Montgomery County Police Department represents that standard, that anytime an allied agency needs assistance, they can call us. Part of our oath as officers states regardless of color, creed, or condition. You know, that day wasn't about politics for us. There's a mission, and we had to respond and take care of the mission. Regardless as to what side of the political spectrum you may think, there was a job that we had to do. And I'm glad that we did it with a level of professionalism. And that's why we are the standard. So thank you.
Well, I thank you for that recollection, and I'm going to have to explain to Cassandra I gave you $20 to say that. No, you know what? We take our academy very seriously. I thank you for that recollection. But again, you all were out there doing it. Like, I had words for you. You guys are all out there doing it. So thank you. I want you all to be safe. Hopefully we get a break from this heat here in a minute. But really, please continue doing what you're doing, because that's a hard thing, keeping you guys as you aren't as old as me, but keeping the experience that you two have in that unit and getting the young officers involved. Please keep doing that, because Montgomery County will continue to be a part of history. So
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.